But yeah, so what we'll be talking about is who is the real centrist, and we'll also be talking about, I guess,
Exactly.
the wings of politics and all that kind of stuff. That'll be the game plan. So, PF Jung, can you introduce yourself to the folks at home?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. My name is Paul. My YouTube channel is called PF Jung. The channel is about I don't know. I guess I'm trying to. This is the goal. This is the nerd way of describing it. The nerd way of describing it is I'm trying to lay the philosophical groundwork for the silent majority because the silent majority doesn't really have a philosophical groundwork, right? They're usually just common sense, everyday people, and so you don't have nerds who are trying to synthesize some Jordan Peterson stuff with some critiques of Vosh and Destiny and all that crap, as if the silent majority cares what Vosh and Destiny have to think. Although the internet culture space definitely has an impact in the broader culture, I think so.
I
There's
I was actually that was going to be my immediate follow up was going to be so I feel like I'm an okay representative if a little bit filled with profanity and rage. I'm an okay representative of like the normies, I guess, because I have my life relatively together. Like I have a wife. I don't think we're getting divorced anytime soon unless she changes her mind. I have a couple. I got a kid. We're working on the second one. I have a mortgage.
right.
I got a car. Bills are paid, but I see the culture war and I see the political landscape, and I'm like, oh my God, the only people who have time to engage with this actively are the lunatics. And as a
Mhm.
result, since it's all the lunatics, yeah, sure, they go viral, they're funny, they got memes and all that kind of stuff. But our national discourse has become so toxic that I don't even think it's functional anymore. And so that's part of what I do while still leaning into the toxicity and the memes and all that kind of stuff as much as I
Right.
can.
Yeah, you got to
Um,
wrestle with the pigs.
right. And like nobody else is gonna do it,
Right.
so might as well. So
Yeah,
how do you feel about that?
Yeah, well, I agree. The danger is becoming a pig in the process of wrestling in the mud with the pigs.
Right.
Because like Yeah, I mean, I mean, the thing that the I started my YouTube channel in October of 2020, like right in the height of the pandemic, and I was really what it was. I started therapy in July of 2020, so I was like
Mm.
4 or 5 months into therapy, and I realized like, okay, I need an outlet, and it wasn't so much of a creative outlet, which is what it's become, but more of an outlet just to express like, hey, we're in a crazy effing time right now, crazy fucking time right now. We're on air, and we
Oh
can say
yeah,
what we
feel
want.
free to cuss as much as you
Um,
want. The Counterpoints audience
yeah,
loves it.
right. So we're in a crazy fucking time right now, and I have friends who we would hang out in the same friend group, and some of them would be Trump supporters, and some of them would not, would hate Trump, and they would be posting stuff on social media like, "If you voted for Trump, you're a fascist." It's like, dude, we literally hang out in the same group with Trump supporters, and you're going to come on here like as if there's like a different version of you that gets to call people fascist, but then when you hang out with them, that's oh, it's we're just friends or whatever. It's like it's all this toxic nonsense. And so I was pissed about it. And so the first couple of videos I made were more directed to, I don't know if they were directed to anything. They were more for people who, knew me or whatever personally already. And I was just kind of calling out the bullshit. And then it developed more into, because I needed a creative outlet. Ultimately, that's what I realized. And so it became a lot of, I focus a lot on like Jordan Peterson type stuff. I think Jordan Peterson is arguably, I don't think he's here yet, but I think he will be regarded as one of the most significant figures of the 21st, early half of the 21st century.
Do you?
I
Mm-hmm.
equate him to like a Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King, but a Martin Luther in the Protestant Reformation.
Mm-hmm.
Martin Luther, took advantage of the printing press and spread, his ideas, and that became a pretty significant historical event. I think Jordan Peterson is riding the podcast wave, which is arguably more significant than the printing press in terms of
Mm-hmm.
reach. And I think he's at least popularizing and laying the groundwork for a bridge between science and religion, which I think is ultimately what needs to happen if we're going to survive the next how much time we have left. seven
No,
years,
this
according to Bo
is
Burnham.
yeah. No, this is actually amazing. Because obviously now, especially if you're on Twitter or lefty circles or whatever, there's this whole instinct to immediately dismiss him, and I think my perception of it, anyways, is I'm like a political grandbaby of Jordan Peterson. Okay, so Jordan Peterson, you know, he smoked a little bit of weed in the 1980s. He had a bunch of paranoid schizophrenia about like nuclear bombs. He thought about culture and the zeitgeist and Jung and all this kind of stuff, and wrote his master thesis, you know, Maps of Meaning, but nobody understood it. So then he had to boil it down into something more palatable to the masses. And then Lauren Southern, I believe, of all people, covers the protests that actually
Yeah,
catapults
that's
him
right.
into, you know, the American zeitgeist. And then because he's been catapulted into the American zeitgeist, you can say, oh, it's not well deserved because he leveraged Bill C-16 into popularity. But then you can't deny, especially I think the early impact of Jordan Peterson for the personal development and psychological discussions of like
Yeah.
purpose and meaning. And then now I think this is my thing is like I just wish he would eat a goddamn vegetable to get essential vitamins and nutrients that he needs. But besides that, like I still harken back to 16 to 18 JBP is still pretty
Yeah,
pissed.
he won't be able to sleep if he eats any vegetables because when he drank cider and couldn't sleep for a month, which
Yeah, like it's
you
like, bro,
know,
there's something
here's the
more
thing.
going
Here's the
on.
thing. I know.
There's
Well, here's
something
the thing.
more
It's
going
like
on than
that's
that.
people are like that's the most absurd thing. It's like, look, I agree it's absurd, but like of all the things to lie about, like that
Yeah.
would be the thing. Like about cider, like I don't believe it, so I don't know what his
Well,
problem is
well,
with
this is
that.
the way. Sorry, real quick. So when I
Yeah, yeah,
bump into people who are really poo poo on Jordan Peterson, I'm like, hey, he's like a shaman, okay? He's like a schizophrenic from like, you know, the
yeah,
ancient tribal days, where it's
yes,
like if you want to have somebody interpret your dreams in order to be like, you know, in order to advance your life further, you go to the shaman. If you want to like get tips on how to like hunt that day or eat that day from a practical standpoint, you don't go to the shaman. Just like respect what it is, you know, like
sure.
it's
He
magic, it's voodoo.
he took the shamanic dose of psychedelic mushrooms 3 times, I think, is what he told Richard Dawkins. 7 grams of mushrooms 3 times. And he said he believes that human beings have the capacity to see DNA. He thinks if you
Uh-huh.
take enough psychedelic mushrooms, your vision, your perception can extend all the way down to the micro level and see DNA. That's his claim, which I agree is quite shamanic and quite
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
paranoid schizophrenic psychedelic esque view. Not to say that it's wrong, but it's definitely out there.
Well, and
But
I think the thing that I saw his debate with Matt Dillahunty, where Dillahunty seemed to
yes,
be like,
that's one of my favorites.
yeah, it seems to be trying to nail him down on like, oh, well, I took shrooms or acid or whatever, and I saw like a cartoon character in the door, and so
Slap into
as
the door. Yeah.
yeah, so should I start like worshiping this deity? And I felt like Jordan, you know, just to project, I felt like he was on the verge of saying this, but he backed off of it. So I'll say it for him. I felt like what he was going to say is like, no, you obtuse fucking idiot. Like, you have to go into these experiences naturally curious, and you
Yes.
have to pull out the shamanic meanings from these experiences as best you can. So, for instance, seeing a cartoon character in a doorway doesn't mean start worshiping the cartoon character. It means like life is filled with art and echoes and shadows
Yeah.
and life and deeper experiences, and everything relates
Right.
to everything. And so if you pulled that meaning out of that, you could actually have a transformational view of how to interact with reality. But instead, of course, the edgy atheist just has to
Dismiss it.
say, you know, fuck you,
It's
worship the
ultimate
cartoon
reductiveness.
character.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like dreams. It's like, it's like, oh well, I had a dream where this ridiculous thing happened. Should I take any meaning from that? It's like, well, first off, you can't put into words the entirety of the dream, right? Virtually all of the meaning in a dream is extra linguistic. It's beneath being able to put into words. So it's like, if you see like a random person in your dream from like work or something, it's like that could mean many different things. That person could represent truly a background character. It could represent someone who you have, you don't like or you have strong feelings for or something like that. And it's like, so to put, yeah, so to take and psychedelics are dreams on steroids, in a sense, or some other thing entirely. But yeah, the whole reductiveness. But I do get like of all the criticism of all the of all the criticism of Jordan Peterson, I think the atheist perspective is most valid. Like the left wing criticism of Peterson in that, like, okay, well, he's a Wash says he's a fascist. It's like, okay, we're gonna throw that word around pretty loosely here now.
Dude, how much have you engaged with like fascist literature or fascist philosophy?
How much have I engaged with it?
Yeah.
Like actual, I mean, honestly, other than lectures about it, I haven't, um, I don't think I've been able to actually read the writings of anyone. It's something that I think needs to be done because if you think fascism is an evil thing, you have an obligation to understand it as best as you can. So,
Well,
but I
so
only like Peterson's lectures are probably the most close contact I've had with hear
yeah,
these
so
writings and
I'm like the Chicken Little of fascism. Not that I think that it's going to destroy us all, but just that I have a perspective on it, and I desperately want to scream into the faces of everybody that my
sure.
perspective is correct,
Okay, I
while
want to hear
nobody
it.
else is. Yeah. so, so basically, from what I can tell, I've contacted and been in contact with like two modern fascist philosophers. One of them being Cultured Thug. He's only on BitChute because he's banned from
Mhm.
everything. One of them being Keith Woods, who I've only talked to temporarily. But both of them are followers and readers of Giovanni Gentile, Benito Mussolini, and Adolf Hitler. And in particular, they revere Gentile as the actual father of fascism. And if I were to summarize it, like if I was to boil it down to its too long didn't read version, it's two concepts interwoven, and then all of the logical implications that pull out from these concepts. So one of them is political corporatism,
Mhm.
believing that the nation state is a body. You should treat it as a body, that you should identify people as a part of a coherent whole. So there's the eyes and the liver and the lungs and the heart and all that kind of stuff. But then that logically leads to some people are cancer or parasites or a
Mhm.
virus or something. So that's where you get into like the ethnic
I see.
genocide.
It's almost a literalization of the metaphor too much.
Right. Yeah. And then also for convenience and expediency, you can declare people either incredibly important to the civilization because they're so important, or you can declare them a virus to the civilization and therefore
Yeah,
worthy of
like cancer.
destruction. Yeah. So it's very
Interesting.
convenient for authoritarians. And then the second part, which actually lends even more credence to the authoritarians, is the belief in flexible authoritarianism, that there isn't such thing as a republic where society is based off of rules, or a democracy where power is based off of the will of the people, or even a monarchy where all of the things are given by God down to a single person and then given to the people. It actually believes in the political struggle between all of these factions, and it valorizes the people who are strong enough to see the weaknesses in each faction and then come to power of their own accord and mold the society back into their will.
Mm.
And then it
Mhm.
sees the next generation and the next generation and the next generation all vying for power, not as some like terrible power for struggle, but as the nature of humanity and therefore the natural way to rule. So
Interesting.
it's a lot of appeals to nature, a lot of appeals to authoritarianism, a lot of appeals to the cults of personality, but then also an appeal to history too, where they will say monarchies of the past were basically this if you look at the way that they actually functioned.
Sure. Have you heard of like the techno feudalism idea that it's like we're in, with the major corporations are essentially the feudal lords now, and we are in a lot of ways functionally in like not a monarch, well,
Digital
monarchy per
serfdom.
se. Yeah, exactly. Literally, it's like,
Yeah. I'm
um,
actually no, I'm okay with this model because it's true. You can't till the digital fields unless you have approval from your
literally,
local
yeah.
lord.
But I didn't even think of that as a metaphor. Yeah, it's like
Uh,
our space on YouTube is granted to us by the
mhm.
overlords and who can revoke it at any time, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and then
I didn't even think of that
you
way.
can be subjected to the barren waste. Like so, for instance, like you could be a part of the kingdom of Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or Twitch, but you have to abide by the rules and the dictates
Right.
of the technocracy. And then if you don't abide by the rules, you can be exiled or banished. Now, technically, they
Yeah.
can't kill you, but they can exile you to BitChute or to other places.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
that's
Which
amazing.
yeah, which there's a bunch of different routes to go to. I was gonna do you think fascism is a real possibility on the rise in the next decade or so?
What I don't think that there will be a openly fascist government inside the United States where the guy says, I am the dictator, I am in charge, what I say goes, fuck all of you, let's start some genocides. Like I don't think that's gonna happen. But what I do think could happen is you could have like personally fascist people who don't care about the republic and don't care about democracy and don't care about the rule of law. All they care about is implementing their vision of the world, and as a result, they could set the world on fire in order to play towards their game. Yeah.
I'm thinking of a name in particular, which has been in the conversation as of late, orbiting in different spheres. Nick Fuentes, right, in the America First kind of that crew. Because I had a conversation with Glink. I don't know if you're familiar with.
I'm not.
He's
I am familiar with Mr. Fuentes.
Yes. Well, because MSNBC labels Nick Fuentes as the leader of the vanguard of the far right of the Republican Party. Now, I don't know how true that is. On one hand, I generally don't like taking MSNBC as arbiters of truth, but let's assume that they're onto something, and that Nick Fuentes represents the extreme wing, represents the leader of an extreme wing of the far right. It's like going back to kind of the initial thing we were talking about. So his conversations with Destiny get what, 1 million views across different videos, ultimately more than that across different platforms.
He's very charismatic, very charming.
Right. But this is how I see it. It's like, okay, MSNBC will just label Nick Fuentes as this far right character, and then that's it. It's just, this is a far right guy, he's bad, no further nuance needed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I fell into this. One of my early videos after January 6th, I had called Nick Fuentes a cockroach. I'm like, all these cockroaches on the far right celebrating this. And looking back, it's like, first off, arguably, no one deserves to be called a cockroach unless you're like a human trafficker or something, maybe. And if you're really getting metaphysical and Jesus-like, or even then, maybe that's not fair. But the issue of like, wait, Nick Fuentes thrives on people hating him and hating the character he's created. It empowers him. It's like Andrew Tate, right? When Andrew Tate says, women are intrinsically lazy. It's like, okay, clearly if you're getting upset at that, it's like, I liken it to, Jeff Dunham, the ventriloquist with the sock puppets. It's like he describes a story where someone got in an argument with his sock puppet. And he was like, look, I'm not talking to you, Jeff. I'm talking to him. It's like, that's how I view like Nick Fuentes and Andrew Tate, and to some degree, like Donald Trump, where you have people that are clearly creating provocative characters. And the more that someone gets pissed off at their character, the more it empowers them, and it makes them look foolish, right? Because, you've got millions of people listening to Destiny and Nick's conversations, right? And a lot of them are kids, 14, 15, 16-year-old. You say, okay, that's really bad. But on the other hand, and it could be bad. I'm not disputing that there are definitely negative potential consequences of that. However, on the other hand, it's like those 14, 15, 16-year-old kids now, because if they listen to a 2-hour conversation about how Nick Fuentes thinks, they have a better finger on the pulse of the literal far right of the vanguard of the fascist Republican Party than the MSNBC journalists do, right? So you have all these people who are like more clued in on the leaders of the people who would polarize society, right? And to me, that's like they're being armed with valuable information, I think. But I don't know. What's your take on it?
No, I think you're nailing something on the head that actually is dangerous, but I think it goes out to a point, and then there's kind of a diminishing point on returns. And I think Nick, Alex Jones, and even Destiny to some extent have fallen afoul of the limits of controversy, and especially Andrew Tate, I think, is a good example. So I think there's a growth cycle that even I have been tempted to capitalize on, where you court controversy intentionally in order to gain attention. Once you gain attention, then you leverage that into your worldview. Once you leverage it into your worldview, you become more powerful, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
But I think that there is a limit to this, where the feudal technocracy will revoke your ability to continue to grow. And you've seen that with Alex Jones and Nick, who have succeeded in spite of being revoked from the technocracy, but you can't say it hasn't hurt them to be exiled. Then when it comes to the gatekeepers basically failing to engage with these people seriously and take their ideas or their movements or the people that they attract seriously, I think that's an utter failure of the technocracy. But I kind of feel like there's a Dunning-Kruger thing going on, where these people go to a nice school. They went to the right schools when they were growing up. They got into the right schools when they went to college. They are nepotistically linked into New York or Los Angeles or whatever, and they're also doing okay financially, and therefore they think that the rest of the country are just a bunch of fucking 80 IQ rubes who need to be tricked out of thinking for themselves, because if they think for themselves, they become dangerous. I think that's the way most of these people think.
Yeah.
And what I think the danger is when you have people like me. I'm an asshole with a webcam. I'm just a fucking asshole with a webcam, but I'm a relatively smart fella. So if I can understand fascism better than a New York Times journalist, if I can understand the landscape of the feudal technocracy as a serf better than the gatekeepers of the technocracy, that's a problem for the technocracy, because they don't even know how to manage the riotous culture that they're creating and profiting from. But then,
and what value do they have? That proves that they offer no value then, because you're doing what,
except for the lands to till.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yes. Rent seeking, basically. It's funny, and you mentioned the whole kind of the arrogance of the intellect type issue that people in those institutions have. Again, one of the things that really drives me and pisses me off, and this is in part projection, because when I was like in, junior high, maybe in early high school, I was not, what would you say? I don't want to say I was like a complete loser, because I was friends with people who weren't losers, but I was still on the loser side. And so my whole thing was, okay, I'm going to start taking an interest in politics, because then I can justify to myself that, look at all the time I spend thinking about really important things. All these people, they care about sports. It's like, well, who cares about sports? Excuse me, I'm caring about the election.
You put the ball down the field. Oh,
yeah, exactly.
They ran the ball down the
pointless.
field too. Oh,
right. So sports. I definitely developed that. Oh, I'm better than other people because I'm smarter and I care about important things. And it's like, that's for anyone listening, in case you didn't know, that's a terrible attitude to have, and it certainly caused problems later on in life.
Listen, to everybody listening, it's okay in your early 20s, but if by your late 20s you're still doing it, there's a fucking problem.
Yeah. And I would say that part of what drives me is resent and anger towards people who think that way. And I know plenty. And the thing that pisses me off is like, and I have friends who are like this, or former friends who are like this. Mm-hmm. It's like the abolish the police stuff. It's like, dude, abolish. Mm-hmm. No, you don't understand. Abolish the police is a great idea. And if you're against it, you're actually racist. It's like the amount of fucking people who see businesses being burned down and think, oh, that's a problem. And then these fucking narcissists who are intelligent and they know how to use words to confuse people and shit will come by and say, no. Actually, you calling out the rioting is you drawing attention to the negative aspects because you don't support the fundamental movement, and therefore you're reinforcing white supremacy, and therefore you're white supremacist. It's like, that fucking pisses me off. I think of like my mom, for example, who's a wonderful person, but she doesn't think about politics that often. She's not, she certainly does not engage in rhetoric and kind of high level discussion on things like this. And I remember her saying she felt bad because one of her friends was telling her so you're just dumb. You just don't get it. You're just not in with the crowd. It's like, dude, the idea of one of these fucking people telling my mom oh, you're actually racist because you're calling attention to to people getting their fucking businesses burned down. It's like, that pisses me off so goddamn much. I see it with other friends and stuff like that.
But this is the disarming thing. So I think this is actually what I think happened was the left, the online left, the culture war left, the progressive left. They thought that they could just do a change in tune, and what would happen is by shifting all of these definitions and shifting all these words and shifting all this philosophy, and then calling people idiots for not understanding it, and then socially shaming them for a decade. I think they thought that they were going to be able to continue to control the narrative. But I think people were so viscerally disgusted by some of the ideas that what happened was like a shoestring or a rubber band where it kind of snapped back in the other direction. This is actually my problem. So I would say the left started it with the progressive like bullshit, calling everybody fucking racist, saying that any disparity and any kind of like outcome or whatever is just racism, blah 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 blah. But that doesn't mean that there aren't real like meat on those bones that you could sink your teeth into and actually create a better world out of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I don't want it to snap so far back in the other direction that we're like, oh, these fucking lunatics SJWs are taking over the country. Let's go ahead and vote in Nick Fuentes as the emperor
exactly.
for Christian theocracy. Yeah.
The pendulum's going to swing back.
Yeah, so final thing is I try to lean into it just enough to take the punch on the chin while also saying what's next. So for instance, if somebody's like, "Oh, you don't like defund the police? You don't think all cops are bastards? You don't like abolish the police as rhetoric? Well, fuck you, you're racist." Then I go, "Okay, I guess I'm a little bit fucking racist then. Now what?" And like
right.
And that's so disarming for them because they're used to two things. They're used to one, somebody like getting all sad and scared and like, "Oh, okay, well, maybe I just have a lot of new things to consider about life. I'll go read some theory." Or they're used to people being like, "Actually, I am racist and fuck you for having a black girlfriend, you fucking piece of shit." Like they expect people to jump into the other direction. So to have more of that like centrist thing where it's like, "Okay, I guess I'm a little bit misogynist.
Right.
I'm a little bit racist. I'm a little bit homophobic." But do you want to have a serious conversation about where you want to take the country next? Or do you just want to call me labels for the next fucking half hour?
Right.
Because we can do either one.
And that's why I thought about, I think comedians are the most impactful cultural figures nowadays. I think that no one influences how people think more than comedians, like Dave Chappelle, Bo Burnham, Bill Burr, like that type of stuff, and even just local comedians and whatnot. It's like, because you can exactly, it's like, I'm a little bit right. It's like, okay, yeah, fine. I don't think all cops are bastards, and I don't think interracial marriage is a problem. Therefore, okay, I might be a little racist. Because remember, interracial marriage arguably is actually the racist thing to do, because it's the fetishization of a different race, right? This is the roundabout philosophy.
Oh, there's a woke solution for everything.
Exactly. White people moving into a neighborhood, gentrification. White people moving out of a neighborhood, white flight. Just they've set up the rhetoric so that they can't lose no matter what. And even when I say they, I can even hear myself do it of like the generalizing, and
he means the Jewish people,
creating an us first them, right? Yes, exactly. It's like I do think I think the reason that comedians have that cultural power is because now, particularly, the cliche idea is, okay, they can speak truth to power or whatever, they can say true things that you can't. But the other thing, and maybe it's not comedians so much, but people like Dave Chappelle, he's not just a comedian. He's a legitimate like philosopher and cultural leader. Like you like when he'll do jokes that are 10 minutes of no laughing whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Hannah, I think it's Hannah Gatsby. She was she like had a comedy special where it like wasn't comedy or something like that.
Yeah, it was people just fucking philosophy, and it had like a 99% Rotten Tomatoes, and for the critics, and then like a 0% Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah,
fucking
exactly,
audience.
Exactly. Yes, which is the norm nowadays. And so, and people were like, "Oh, well, people didn't like Nanette's version of comedy because they're just bigoted or something like that." But I'm like, hold on, go look at a Dave Chappelle joke where he will like tell a story of like a kid that like got murdered by the police or something, and it's no one's laughing for 10 minutes, and at the end he makes a joke, but it's all in service of a point, right? And the idea is like, if you can be authentic and hit on true things, and like that has the capacity to change people's minds more than logical arguments. Because one of the things that dissuades me a lot from being online and being in these spaces is like, because I've done videos like on Vosh or whatever, and I think, okay, Vosh is elite. My thought process is Vosh is a big figure in the online left. The online space is a leading indicator of where the culture goes, and arguably influences where the culture goes. Like the example, Joaquin Castro, or Julian Castro, I believe, Joaquin's his brother. In the debates, he said, this was like a while ago, let's not forget our trans brothers and sisters who are also going to be affected by abortion. It's like, okay, you can make some case that there's some niche thing or whatever. But like the fact that that was brought up in a debate, a mainstream debate, was because the conversation started online. And I see that as like a continuation, right? So I think, okay, Vosh is an important figure down the line or something. But then I just watched like him just dig himself in holes and just say the most stupid things, and I'm like, maybe he's there for a moment. He's a flash in the pan, but like it's just going to self-destruct, right? And like if you really are peddling ideas that I think are as bad as the ideas he peddles, it'll be destructive. And the people that will genuinely have long-term influence are not the ones who are good at rhetoric, but the people who are authentic and are able to explain, like, okay, I am not just talking to you as like a person in a debate space. Like, I'm a real person talking to a real person, and we're communicating in this way.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right. But what I see is something completely different, which I think is horrifying. But it also kind of it falls in line with what I believe about humanity. So for me, what I see is God or Jesus or whatever. He talks about like the false prophets, right? Beware of false prophets. They'll be in blah blah blah. They'll be at the end times, et cetera, et cetera. And for me, I view everyone who gains like a certain level of following as some level of false prophet. Like even me to some extent.
Everyone embodies that.
Right. So what's kind of going on is he's going to lure away, and he has lured away tens of thousands, perhaps a few 100,000 people, and he's going to have a broader impact on culture. And like you said, it could be a flash in the pan. It could be a
who are you talking about? You talking about Vosh?
Vosh or
Gosh,
Hassan Piker as an extension of the idea set, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But the point is that we're all vying for the political souls of the next generation. So are they going to be dumbass, like ahistorical, illiterate, socialists who are just like, they basically advocate for Norway fiscal policy while also making apologia for the Soviet Union, which is like disgusting to me on so many levels. I want to fucking puke just saying it out loud. Is that going to be their cultural contributions? And the answer is probably yes. And then same thing with Nick Fuentes. Will his cultural contribution be a few 100,000 Christian nationalists? And the answer is yes. So then the question is there enough of a coherent culture left in the middle, like liberalism with a capital L, mixed economy capitalism, civic nationalism, Americanism, all that kind of stuff? Are the ideas that we were raised with as children strong enough, and do they have enough intelligent advocates to survive into the next generation? And the truth is, I think yes, but I also see a woefully inadequate amount of people who are able to articulate why our systems are good in the first place. And that's actually part of the reason why I liked old school JBP, was because he was really good at taking traditions that you participated in as a child, where you're like, why the fuck am I going to church? Why am I tithing? Why am I, giving up meat for Lent? Why am I saying the pledge? Why am I
writing essays in school?
Yeah. Why am I participating in public education? And he can take something that you've hated for a long part of your life and be like, hey, this is the good thing that you gleaned out of it. And you're like, oh shit. Like,
clean your room. That's what that meme refers to.
It was on the tip of my tongue the entire time, but I kind of didn't know how to articulate why this was good.
Right. And your point about 06, or what was it? What's the year on Peterson that you said is classic
16, 16 to 18 for me is classic Peterson.
Yes. I may be debating a big left-wing YouTuber at some point, and I want about Jordan Peterson. I want to. My opening statement is going to say something to the effect of, I view Jordan Peterson the same way as I view Star Wars, which is the original stuff is great, but the new stuff is kind of shit, right? And it's like, and like for me, like Star Wars, Knights of the Republic 2 is arguably like quintessential Star Wars, cannot be beaten, one of the best games of all time. And I think like
some of the
Peterson,
best cinematics too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And plot and philosophy too. Just like Kreia is like one of the best characters of all time, I think. And then Peterson is like in the intro to personality lectures, the maps and meaning lectures, the biblical lectures. It's like, that's
amazing.
the stuff. Yeah. That's the stuff that I think has yet to even ripple through the culture completely. Right. That it's just beginning, right? Like Martin Luther put his shit on the church wall, not his shit, but his issues on the church
Carrying
wall.
his poop on the ship on the church
Yeah,
wall. Yep.
exactly.
Yep.
And it took many decades to, and arguably is still unfolding, the Protestant Reformation. We're still feeling the effects of that. And Peterson is I think, in a similar position where he's put this stuff out there and it's propagating and it's flowing through people. But yeah, it's putting words to things that people already knew. It's like, well, why get married? It's like, well, you could just cohabitate with someone and you could never get married, and why tie yourself up like that, blah blah blah. And it's like, well, there's things that are beneath articulation, that have value or whatnot.
Well, do you know the most frustrating thing for me is when leftists say we all already knew that.
In regards to
anything Jordan Peterson says. So
when they say it's banal,
yeah.
Oh, it's just banal.
Like,
self-help.
oh yeah,
now.
of
It's
course,
like, well,
tell the
what's
truth
problem?
or at least don't lie. Or of course, pet a cat when you're crossing the street, or leave children alone when they're skateboarding. But we all already know this. And it's like, then why are you culturally against it?
Exactly.
Why are you recoiling?
Yeah.
Why are you fighting? Why are you screaming? And on top of that, I'm a young man who was raised in the thousands, basically. I didn't know this. I knew this instinctively on a subconscious level, and I knew this
Right.
on a like my parents told me how to do it, but not why.
Mm-hmm,
so what's the problem with somebody telling me why?
Right. It's like getting up early in the morning and catching the sun in the morning. It's like getting up on time, you actually feel better. It's like I would rationalize it. It's like, yeah, okay, get up on time. That's obviously healthy. But prior to Andrew Huberman is, I don't know if you're familiar with him.
I'm not.
He's like a neuroscience lecturer that's relatively popular. He talks about how you need to, when you wake up in the morning, you need to get sunlight in your eyes because there's a cluster of neurons called the suprachiasmatic nucleus right here. And it sets your circadian rhythm. So what happens is the sunlight, and it has to be at a low angle because it's the morning sun. So it's when it's coming through the UV, the atmosphere at a low angle, it's a particular kind of light. It hits the photoreceptors in your eyes, which activates, or whatever, the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And then 14 hours later, melatonin is released. It's like, oh, people previously it was just get up early and stop sleeping so late. It's like that doesn't have the compelling narrative power of, hey, when you wake up, this is what's literally happening in your brain. And if you don't catch the sun in the morning, then you feel like shit for the next day or two. It's like, oh, now I'm going to when I just moved to Texas in the last month, and I literally looked for a place that had a balcony to make sure that the sun was out there so I could go out there in the morning and wake up. So
I saw without knowing the guy, I saw the clip of that, and I was thinking about reinstalling some shades, and I chose not to.
Nice.
Because I was like, fuck it. Like, I'm still waking up like a little bit later just because of my shift or whatever, but I also want to be a little bit more hooked into the world around me. And so I didn't install the shades. And as a result, it like the process of getting up is not waking up in a cave and then groggily fighting out of the cave. It's actually like, it kind of feels like I'm getting up with the day itself.
Yes,
too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. In college, I one of the places I stayed at lived at my junior and senior year, I could basically go full darkness in the morning, block out all the sun, and I would do that. And it's like, man, it's great to sleep, and I can sit there and I can kind of half dream, and I'm in this like half psychedelic state where it's like, okay, it's there's it's not like I'm just sitting there depressed or whatever. It's like I'm feeling something in that. But then I felt like shit the rest of the day, right? So it's like having that explanatory power behind it, and that's what I think. Yeah, that's what I think Peterson does.
Yeah, well, there's two comments that are relevant, and also if we bump into an hour and basically Mr. Paul cuts out randomly, it's just because we're doing the beta test right now. So if we cut out randomly, I'll just talk to chat and dip out or whatever. But we're still going to be doing this either weekly or every couple of weeks. Me and Paul waxing philosophical, so we can troubleshoot the bugs and help Arium with the UI. Also, by the way, I know I've memed about it a few times in chat, but if you want to go to arium.com, I've linked it a couple of times in the chat. Not only can you participate in the chat here, but also there's Looser TOS. It's a free speech website. I'm not saying you have to say slurs. I'm just saying it's an option to you that's available if you choose to exercise it. So anyways, we have two comments that I think are relevant. Peterson is dishonest insofar as he won't just admit that in actuality he's just another Christian apologist, pretending to be an unbiased intellectual. Um, I don't think so, and I think that like if you mean apologism like defense, I don't think he's ever denied the fact that he defends the Christian narrative as like spiritually or socially significant. I think he's just couched it in Evo psych because he doesn't want to admit that like he. I think at times he's a believer and at times he's not. I actually view them, or I viewed his early stuff as he was very much an agnostic the way that I'm agnostic. Like, yeah, it would be cool if it was real, but I don't know if it's actually real. But here's all the things that I still think are important, and here's why I live as if it were real. That all of that appeals to me like a motherfucker. And then apologia or apologies, that can sound weak, but apologia just means defense. So I think he defends this shit all day. Then, sorry, before you tangent, one more tangent.
Go ahead.
Tradition used to be valued because people appreciated that their ancestors has already figured out useful patterns and behaviors. Nowadays, everybody wants to know why. Okay. I don't want these traditions to die. So if you want Paul and me to articulate to young folk why these things are important and why they should consider them from an Evo psych perspective and not necessarily a religious dogmatic perspective, we have to know why, or else it's going to die.
Real quick on the point about the Peterson, basically a religious apologist. I get that, although I've done a video specifically about, it's called Why Atheists and Fundamentalists Are Wrong About Peterson. Peterson, one of the reasons I love Peterson is he mocks fundamentalists. Not like, okay, mock might be too strong of a word, but not really. Like he says you're called upon to believe things that no one can believe. And I remember him answering a question to somebody. He's like, I really don't like it when like fundamentalists will kind of subtly ask me like to go to church and be like, you need to come or something like that. And he had kind of some poison in his voice about the whole, oh, Peterson, you're really a Christian or whatnot, because he acts as if he believes God is true, but fundamentalists don't like him, and I've talked to fundamentalists.
Like me. He's a fucking agnostic.
Exactly. It's like you can't be. This is my thing. Is like you can't be a fundamentalist if your whole worldview is based on evolution, right? It's like that by definition, you're not a fundamentalist. And so,
I'm like a deist agnostic. Like I believe that. Okay, so right. I believe that there's a fundamental force in the universe. It created a bunch of ordered rules.
Yep.
And that is what most people throughout history have conceptualized as God. I think that when you
it manifests in psychedelic experience.
So go ahead and do 7 grams of shrooms and talk to God about cartoon characters.
Only when you're ready. Only when you purified yourself. But yes.
Yeah, and then so that's kind of the fundamental part of God for me. And then what we can extrapolate out from that is there's a way to live a human life that leads to what we would typically deem as negative consequences. A shorter life, a more miserable life, worse health outcomes, worse social outcomes, worse all sorts of outcomes. And if you observe those negative outcomes, they will correlate, not one-to-one, but they will correlate with what most religious people describe as sin. And then if you look at the positives, like telling the truth, being respectful towards your family, not trying to fuck your neighbor's wife, don't steal shit, don't murder, like all that kind of stuff, these things would correlate, not one-to-one, but they would correlate with a good life. And as a result, you can almost take observable reality by taking mushrooms if you're a desert mystic 3,000 years ago, write down the rules for life, and then people can try to live good lives and bad lives accordingly. But to pretend that this is all arbitrary is fucking stupid. And even if we were to believe in a cosmic nihilist version of reality where none of our efforts really matter in the ultimate consequence, that's totally fine, because in the meantime you have immediate impact, and you have immediate impact on living creatures. And this is what frustrates me about cosmic nihilists, is they can be like really, really dark and kind of gross and nihilistic about how inconsequential everything is. But if I showed up, I'm gonna be a little bit rude, if I showed up to their house with a fucking potato peeler and start taking off fucking chunks of skin, they're gonna have an opinion on that, whether or not that's good or bad. Like they'll have a fucking moral opinion about that. So
yeah, and I think one of your point about if you can't argue away certain aspects of reality, and you can't even put them into words, right? And this is one of the things that I think why the fundamentalists really don't like Peterson is because like Christian apologetics, I don't know how much experience you've had with talking to like people who do like Christian apologetics, where like their arguments are based solely on logic. How God is, you can't have logic, you can't make any sort of truth claim unless you believe in a God. Which like there's some variation of that where that's true, and I think that's why they've been able to self-sustain for so long. Because like technically, if you are operating in
From
the
their
realm of logic,
outputs, yeah.
yeah, you do need to have some fundamental faith claim in order for logic to even begin to work, and you could argue that's God. And so it's like, all right, whatever. But Peterson's whole thing is, or one of the more valuable things from pragmatism, which is what I've learned from Peterson, is like there's so much information, true information, that cannot have words put to it, right? Like at what point does music what at what point does a collection of sounds become music? Or the example he specifically gives, and has legal bearing, is the ruling on pornography. It's like define pornography. Well, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. It's like that to this day is an accepted definition of something that is actual of like significant consequence, right? Like art versus pornography is like, you know, the legal implications of that are significant. And that's and the same with the reasonable person standard, right? It's like, what define a reasonable person standard? It's like, no, you literally can't. We're taking it for granted that there's just something that we all understand is like, would a reasonable person in this circumstance act a certain way? And we assume that if we distribute it to a jury of 12 people, that the thing that's common across all of them is something we would call a reasonable person standard. We can't put it into words. And so when the apologists are like, well, I came to my belief in God because of logic. Like I logicked my way to it, and I realized I can't even make a truth claim without believing in God and the resurrection, all that. It's like,
Probably not, bud.
yeah, and it's like you are, to the degree that religion has value, which it obviously does. It's like like individual testimonies are far more compelling to me than, oh, I logicked my way through it and I concluded that God had to be real, otherwise I couldn't make truth claims. It's like, no, I was at a horrible place in my life, and this happened, and it made my life better, and now I'm living a better life. It's like that. I'm not saying that's proof, but that certainly has more. It's more compelling to, I think, me certainly, and I think most people than pure logic. I think I started this at 3:10, so I think it might crap out at 4:10, which is 4 minutes from now.
Okay, yeah. So I want
Just
to get
FYI.
I want to get one more thing in.
Yeah.
The power. One of the other things is the power of irrationality. That was one of the things that Jordan Peterson said, where he was like, listen, sometimes things don't make sense, and you can't make them logically coherent, and you can't have an academic study, and yet they seem to be true anyways, or they seem to be true to you anyways, and it's okay to accept that part of the human experience is irrationality. For instance, like we in the modern era have kind of like bisected human experience from subjective and objective, and as a result we have rational and irrational.
Yes,
And
exactly.
so people are constantly trying to force everything into the rational box, but you have to understand that for like a religious person or any kind of person in the medieval era, they wouldn't have this bisection of existence. They would actually have just a coherent reality that was both subjective and factored in by objective at the same time. And so to deny the intersection of the subjectivity and objectivity is actually to deny your own humanity. And I was like, oh, shit. I can accept the fact that I'm a little bit fucking crazy, and I have some crazy ideas, and some of them seem right to me, even though I don't have a study to back them up. Thank you for permission to be human.
Yes.
And that was a powerful revelation.
Yeah, I am, fuck me for, I don't have any credentials to say this, but I am increasingly led to believe that the subjective versus objective distinction, even just terminologically, right, not just in philosophy, that distinction is so hobbling to like the true nature of the. And John Vervaeke, who is one of Jordan Peterson's buddies, and he's been on the Lex Friedman podcast. He's like a philosopher in the same realm as Peterson. He has a term called transjective, which is like that's what's objective about the subjective experience, and it's like that he's putting words to something that I think needs to be done, because the fact that people can't get it through their heads, like there are objective qualities about subjective experience, and like to say that that's just irrational and therefore wrong and not real, it's like that's foolish. But
yeah.
Yes. Well, before it craps out, thank you very much for talking to me.
No, my pleasure. Let's do it in a couple of weeks. And also, you want to shout out your YouTube channel?
Yes, PF Jung. I do a lot of videos explaining Jordan Peterson's work for people who are interested. So, event will automatically end in 1 minute. Okay, so we do get a timer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So pat out the
yes,
shout
but we'll
out.
yes, yes. Well, you and I will definitely. Well, we're gonna keep doing this anyway for Ariam and Danny. So we'll talk again. But yes, we do need more centrists. Although I saw you were in the car with Lauren Southern a couple weeks ago. So you're just a fascist in disguise.
I was about to
You're
say
giving
closet Nazi, so
exactly,
it
which
is
is
what it is.
that's
Which is
exactly
centrist
which.
anyway, so I mean that's fine.
Well, right. It's right. It's like, well, and the right wing will just call us liberals in disguise who are like, "Oh, wait, you think transgender adults should be able to live their life like, happy and free? Oh, you're a degenerate scumbag." It's like,
You're a fucking
well, hey,
communist.
right, exactly. If these dumbasses are calling me one name and these dumbasses are calling me one name, that's fine. I like a healthy balance. So,
Perfect. All
yin
right,
and yang.
brother.
All right, we'll talk again in a week or two.
Catch you, catch you.
Peace.
Nice. We could have timed that better if we fucking wanted to. All right, so do some questions. Let me get my webcam. Split cam. Oh, that was fun as fuck. I love conversations like that. I love smart motherfuckers who are curious and all of that kind of stuff. And sorry, I'm rebooting my camera right now. Let me just find my split cam. Boop. Start it up again. Split cam. There we go. Hello, guys. Yeah, and so that was Paul Jung, and my name's Connor. I run this beautiful podcast named Counterpoints. What a centrist result! Yeah, well, not enough of you jumped over. I told you that you could spam slurs in the chat, and not enough of you took advantage of it. There was only like 4 or 5 people on Arium itself. But this is what I would say is Arium.com is the project of a friend, Danny. He's from Canada. He's, I would say, liberal or libertarian, probably more libertarian than he is anything else. But he's working on this project where he's trying to create debate software and a platform that appeals to people who want to get outside of the YouTube Twitch dynamic and therefore be a little bit looser on terms of service, but also be focused on the Twitch and YouTube political debate sphere. So what I would say, because Danny's probably listening at this point, 1, having a conversation with Paul was awesome. 2, the software was just fine. I think the only thing that we're missing is just creating the call one touch. Basically being able to call somebody on the software as if it was like a Discord call or something like that. And then the same thing with like creating rooms and then having like a limited amount of rooms that you could send out with a code in order to get people to do that. But if you left the chat feature the same, and if you left the voting feature the same and all that kind of stuff, then I think it's just a question of us doing what I just did and trying to bleed people over to the chat. So we have more Arium people hanging out because they know that they can be a little bit more edgy and fun in the chat rather than YouTube or Twitch. So yeah, that was pretty great. So if you guys have any questions or concerns, at Counterpoints, at Connor in the chat, and we'll be doing this weekly. And we got 10 Canadian, which is fake money, but that's okay. Thank you for Arium. Thanks, guys, for being a part of our beta test. More exciting debates and features coming up. Yeah, they're working on it, and we're giving them the feedback to keep it going. Get behind me, Satan. Yeah, so with Satan, the great opponent, the best thing he ever did was convince you that he doesn't exist. None of the idiots formally in power in the U.S. right now seem to, or I think you mean formally, in power seem to care about the lives of Americans, so I wouldn't bet against them trying to pull another dictator in. Yeah, I agree. Intentional or unintentional, they care more about power, influence, and money than anything else. Lucifer, the Doberman, says, love the new hair. You look ready for battle. Thank you. I did get bored. My head got hot, as Pedro from Napoleon Dynamite would say. So my head got hot, so I shaved it while I had the coof. And now, apparently, I survived. At Counterpoints, well put. I do try to put things well. You mean white power? Maybe. Depends on what we're talking about. It was kind of funny that Californians were fleeing to Mexico City and the locals weren't happy with them. I fucking love that shit. Let's Uno reverse card all of this shit. Like, there was also, like, a black guy who was pissed off because a black family dated into white people twice, and the grandkids look white as fuck. I say that instead of the great replacement with all the white people, I say we intentionally interracially marry, but only insofar as it makes people lighter of skin. So at one point, the entire world will be the same color, but it'll be white people. We will dominate. Of course, everybody will be a mix, but aesthetically, The whites will win. Ba 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 ba. Why everyone loves Destiny? Because he has some hilarious moments, an edgy sense of humor, even laughing at jokes he disagrees with because they're funny. Yeah, and he's relatively intellectually honest. Centrist is not a cowardly political stance to hold. It is simply that what any reasonable person can understand is how the government has ever actually worked at all. Compromise a mandatory requirement. True. It's exhausting when it seems like all the other centrists are busy with their lives because they're not fucking lunatic autists who like to fight on the internet, and you're out here by yourself fighting everybody. Compromise is verboten. True. Someone's dryer went off. I think it was Jung's. Civil society is now a bureaucratic society. Yeah, actually, that was one of the things that I think I took most from this conversation. It was, what was it? The technocracy. We're technocratic serfs. I think that's an interesting thing to think about. Counterpoints. Look at the Magic the Gathering crossover yet? I have not, and honestly, who was it? You can blame the folks at Darksider and Karatari. You can blame them for me not really getting into it as much because he was like, "Oh yeah, like everything within the universe technically makes sense within all of the other universes because you're pulling them from the other planes into the battle or whatever." Which is like, I mean, I get how that's cool because it's fun because it's like Digimon with everybody. Like you don't just have Digimon, you got Pokemon and you got Warhammer 40K and you got this and you got that. And actually, Trazen the Infinite is probably the best Magic the Gathering player, but I'm not sure if it's for me, basically. Like, maybe. We'll see. Is bacon a slur? Only if you scream it at Muslim people. You guys made for a good conversation so far. Yeah, well, Paul's a smart cat. Intellectual and be Christian, question mark? Yeah, you can be smart. Like, I don't know. I'm not a believer, but, build your own God, indeed. I call it the Tao, the way or the path. That's in Taoism. Sorry for yawning in your ears. It's just kind of a long day. Good life. How do you define that? That's the question that everybody's been asking forever, Lucifer the Doberman. But as much as leftoids like to pretend to be fucking idiots when it comes to like, well, what's the good life? Maybe I could just do heroin and cheat on my wife and everything will come up my way. Like, okay, you're also a fucking idiot. And I use that, excuse me, aggressive statement. If I show up to your house and with a fucking potato peeler and I start taking fucking skin off, you're gonna have a pretty quick opinion about whether or not that's good or bad. I'll tell you that. Catholicism sucks. Having shoulder pain, trying to make sure it's not a heart attack and it's just gas. Could be the pericarditis. Might have gotten me. This guy needs to go on such an Adam. True. Update on the hippy dippy takeover. Probably going to do it in like a month or so. We need to get all our ducks in a line and try to get a big inaugural show. Do all religious experiences give the same amount of benefit? And it is, of course, convenience that we default to Christianity in the West. No, not all of them give the same amount of benefit. And yes, Christianity has a lot of good things that are better than all the other ones. Fake money? Give it back then. No, never. I'll translate into some real money. What's your opinion on the Martha's Vineyard situation? So I know this pisses off the lefties, but for me, I actually think it's decent right-wing trolling. And I get that, like, being put on a bus to fucking Boston is, technically a human rights violation, but there's worse human rights violations, so, chill a little bit. And also, they're like, the Martha's Vineyard people are so fucking like, oh, well, we fed them and we housed them for a day, and then we put them on a bus to a different state. Congratulations, you did what everybody else does in the entire fucking country all the time, almost as if that was the point. Sounds like 40K Smash Bros. It actually is. Bacon! Yeah, I hope there's no Muslims in the chat. I got a point. Sorry, but what is Arium? Is that like Twitch? Yeah, so it's basically, they're trying to develop it to be the Twitch of the political debate scene. So it's a website. It's going to be its own platform. It has its own integrated chat. They're building out the infrastructure for one-on-one debates and panel shows. And they're trying to incorporate a lot of features to become the political and the debate sphere. So, yeah. This is why I love this channel, based. Genuine question. Can you elaborate on my previous question? Ryanok Elliott, fucking ask your question again. Now I gotta fucking scroll? Are you shitting me? Do all religious experiences give the same amount of benefit? No. So, for instance, Islam, throw the gays off the fucking rooftops. Probably not good. Also in Islam, dogs are bad. Very clearly, that did not come from God himself because dogs are God's creature. So, if you have a dog-based religion, like Christianity, where being sweet and a floofer is a part of the thing, that's clearly better than a cat-based religion, like Islam, where cats are the principal animal and dogs are viewed as disgusting. Very clearly, Muhammad was doing some mushrooms out in the fucking desert and came to the wrong conclusions. So, yep. Boop, 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 boop. Good life. Raise your kids right and always support them. They are immortality, or are closest to it. True. Sounds good. I'm currently boycotting Twitch is more like a kindergarten with a bikini bar attached to it. True. Dobermans are humans' best friend. Partially true. Thoughts on the new conflicts with Russian allies Armenia? No opinion. All of y'all need to chill the fuck out and stop killing the fuck out of each other. So, yeah. All right, so we're down to 35 people, which I like for a random Saturday fucking pop-on debate stream. But I want to go spend time with my family and do other shit, and also I need to shoot some content for you guys later. So it was fun hanging out with y'all in the middle of the afternoon, but I'm going to go do other normal people shit. So I love you guys. Have a beautiful day. Catch you later. Bye.